many, like, guys, everybody who's speaking today, like, I really look up to you, and you guys get involved and be a BA like Tom. Ladies and gentlemen, Tom Hoff.
Thank you, Mr. Reels. I don't deserve the words you said for me. I was just trying to be a Southern gentleman and let the lady speak. We have inherent rights just for being human beings. You have no right to own another person, as we all know. That's why we're all here. None of us want to be here. None of us want to be involved in politics, but we know that we don't have our rights and we must stand up against them. So being that, we all made the choice to be here today. I made the choice that I didn't like what I was seeing on the ballot, and I decided to run for Huntsville City Council. Now, I didn't win. 2 months before Election Day, the only 4 people in the district that knew who I was, because I moved to Huntsville. I'm from Warner Robins, Georgia originally, went to Auburn for 10 years. War Eagle. Sorry, Arkansas. We stole that one from you last night. But no one knew who I was except for my wife, my mother-in-law, and Mr. John Meredith, who was one of the candidates on the ballot against me, running against incumbent Mr. Colbert. I got 12.5% in the general election. That means 1 out of every 8 people that heard my message decided I was the best choice on the candidate, and I didn't know anybody, I didn't have any money, and I didn't have anywhere near the name recognition that my opponents had. All I did was run on the idea that you know how to live your life better than I do, better than Mr. Cohen over here does, better than any person in government does. You know how to do it. I don't. I don't walk through you in your shoes. So it's a testament that this message resonates. This message matters. We need you to get up and help us get this message out here. We need you to join in the efforts of the Alabama Libertarian Party. It doesn't have to be financial. If it is, that's great. It helps. But we need you to help speak up and stand up for your rights, to your friends, to your neighbors. We need you to run for office if you're willing to do that. I'm also the political director for the state of Alabama. I'm learning how to run a campaign. 6 months ago, I had absolutely no idea. I still don't, but I'm learning. I'm making steps every day to do so. By showing up, I got elected into this at-large position. By reaching out, I got to do an event with Dr. Jorgensen. By putting my name out there, I got Mr. Meredith to ask me for his endorsement. And now, while he wasn't willing to go forward with the decriminalization of marijuana, I did get him to buy in to fight against the grocery tax that the citizens of Huntsville have to pay. So he's bought into that. He's committed to me that he's going to push to get rid of the grocery tax. So while I might not have won by doing it, we got rid of the incumbent, and we got somebody that wants to shrink the size of the government and stop making us pay a tribute to be able to eat. These are the things that we need to be pushing for. I want to make a strong push that your vote matters. Every vote matters. We are in one of 35 states that it matters incredibly that it doesn't matter unless you vote for a libertarian option. If we can reach a 5% threshold nationwide, we will qualify for federal election committee funds. Now, you might have heard this. It might be kind of bewildering to you. What you might not realize is the Democratic Party and the Republican Party received $103 million of our taxpayer money this year to run their campaigns against Dr. Jorgensen. That's roughly $50 million each. That's roughly 15% of what the Republican Party spent in 2016. That's a huge chunk. Now, if the Libertarian Party could do it, we've discussed some ideas. We want to do good with it. We want to put it back into the community. It breaks down to about 80 cents per voter. So when you go out to the polls on November 3rd, your vote is literally worth 80 cents to the Democrats or to the Republicans unless we hit that 50% or 5% threshold, which we would receive those funds, and we want to give it back through volunteerism, I hope. That would be up to whoever the next candidate is. But these are the messages that I want to push. With that said, I just want to endorse Mr. Cohen. I want to thank him so much for coming out to Alabama and being a part of this. Please reach out to me if you want to help push the party in Alabama. It is my goal. I had a goal of 25 libertarians on the ballot for 2022. We're walking around. We got people with petition clipboards trying to get ballot access. We need to receive over 50,000 qualified signatures to get statewide ballot access for the party. And if you're interested in becoming, a county commissioner, representative, if you want to run for anything, any office, I want to help you do that here in Alabama to set us free. So it's an honor to meet someone that Tom Petty wrote a song after, Spike. I won't back down. We'll pass it back over. But reach out to me. We're doing some videos, hopefully. I'm a real libertarian. You're a real libertarian. We're going to build the party up, and we're going to give you some options in Alabama. Thank you.
And you can join the party at lpalabama.org. So, whenever I was asked to do this, my response, and I quote, was, "Why would you want me to do this?" And I guess the answer was probably like, "Oh, you'll be light and fun and keep everybody entertained." I hope I did that a little bit, but preparing for this, I was speaking with one of my friends, and I was like, I really don't know what do you say whenever you're introducing the next vice president of the United States? And they said, well, you just say why you support them. Well, that opened up a whole can of worms. How do I describe exactly why I support Joe Jorgensen and Spike Cohen? And I got to thinking about it, and it just kept going in my brain for days. Is it because taxation is theft? Is it because of that? I mean, that's part of it. Is it because they want to end qualified immunity so that police officers can be held accountable? Well, absolutely. Well, for me, I think for a lot of people, there are things that you 100% agree with the candidate on, and your friends will tell you like, yeah, well, I agree with that too, but I don't want to waste my vote. I don't agree with this part of their platform or this part of their platform. But for me, there are a lot of issues that they are talking about that nobody else is talking about. And those issues, disagree on minor points all you want, but those issues are the most important issues that are facing us. And one of those issues that I feel really strongly about is getting rid of these IP laws that corporations use to abuse power, steal money, extort us for very important pharmaceutical drugs that can save lives. In 2009, my dad was diagnosed with leukemia, and it was a very mild case of leukemia that he was going to live. All he had to do was take a pill every day for the rest of his life. Well, that sounds good. Except that pill's $4,000 every day for the rest of your life. My dad stopped voting in the 70s. He was tired of Republicans and Democrats. Everything that the Republicans say they're going to do, they don't do. Everything the Democrats say they're going to do, they don't do. They act exactly the same when they get into office. And the only time I ever saw my dad get excited about a candidate was when he was watching a Libertarian Party debate. He was going to go vote that year. He never made it to Election Day. He passed away from leukemia. And that one issue is enough for me. You probably have an issue that you care really strongly about too with this ticket, and that one issue is enough. And anybody that tells you any differently is wrong. And that is why I am super excited. I am so proud to bring up the next president of these United States, vice president. I'm so sorry. The next, in the future, maybe not the next one. Okay, in the future, I'll calm down. I got really excited there, Spike. I got really excited. The next vice president of these United States, Mr. Jeremy Cohen.
Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much to the Libertarian Party of Alabama. Thank you so much to the Whiskey Region of Tennessee Libertarian Party for all your help with this. Thank you to all the volunteers that have helped put this together. And thank you, of course, to all of you for coming. Give yourselves a round of applause for coming out today on this beautiful weather that we're having today in Birmingham, Alabama. And thank you, of course, to Jonathan for getting ahead of himself there at the end. I'm happy to be here in Alabama, in Birmingham, in a city that is the home of so many historical injustices that have happened, but is also the home of so many fights to correct those injustices and end them so that we don't have to face those in the future. Who's ready to take back the power? Who here is ready to end this thieving, murderous, crony system that robs from you to give to incredibly powerful people who have bought and sold the politicians that rule over us? Who here is ready to build a future for our children and their children and their children that is freer and safer and happier and healthier than the ones that we have today? Folks, that's why Joe and I are running for president and vice president. That's why Tom and other people up and down the ballot are running for offices across the country in all 50 states plus D.C. That's why we're running as libertarians, because we recognize, we have seen what Republicans and Democrats have done with their exclusive control of every lever of power in government in this country for over 160 years. We've seen that they've used that control to take more and more and more control of your life so that they can rob you of your power, so that they can rob you of your freedom, and of course, so that they can rob you of your money. What do they do with that money? They use it to enrich themselves and be well-heeled, politically connected billionaire cronies who have bought and paid for them to be in office. Folks, the reason that we're libertarians is because we know what we get from Republicans and Democrats. We know that the only way for us to live as free as we wish to is to take the power back. We know that the way for us to live our best lives is to have our power and our freedom and our money back so that we can choose how to live and have those barriers and burdens that they put in place removed so that we can thrive. That's why we're libertarians, and that's why we're voting for Joe Jorgensen. Folks, who here is sick and tired of watching their loved ones, their family members, maybe even yourselves, swear an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States and the American people from all enemies, foreign and domestic, only to be sent overseas by those domestic enemies to fight and kill and potentially die for the benefit of military contractors and central bankers and foreign dictators? Who's sick of that? And who's sick of watching those veterans of those wars, if they're fortunate enough not to come home in a flag-draped casket, often coming home with PTSD and traumatic brain injuries and other chronic health issues, and being subjected to the worst form of health care in this country, the Veterans Administration? Who here is sick and tired of watching the cost of living, everything from health care to housing, higher education, and everything in between, spiraling out of control because of the Federal Reserve and other disastrous Republican policies? Who here is sick and tired of watching entire industries fleeing, not just here in Alabama, but around the country, and either going overseas or just going out of business? Because Republicans and Democrats and the cronies that put them in office recognize that they can make way more money if they make it increasingly unaffordable to do business in America and to hire you, the American people. Who here is sick and tired of watching people's lives being destroyed and entire communities being decimated because of this disastrous, failed, and racist war on drugs? Who here is sick and tired of watching that war being carried out in the most brutal terms possible by an increasingly militarized, increasingly unaccountable police force that harm all of us, but especially the most marginalized among us? And who here is sick and tired of watching that same militarized police state tell you what weapons you can own to protect yourselves and your communities and your loved ones while they go and buy whatever military equipment they want and stick you with a bill for it? And And folks, of course, who here is sick and tired of being told whether or not you're essential, whether or not you should be allowed to go outside, whether or not you should be allowed to work or to operate your business, whether you should be allowed to go to a hospital to get a cancer screening or to get therapy for your addiction or your depression, whether or not you should be able to visit your loved ones or go to your house of worship, whether or not you should be able to live your life, and being told to stay inside and given $1,200 of your own money and then watch trillions of dollars being handed out to multinational, multi-billion-dollar corporations. Who's sick and tired of being in the worst recession of our lives while stock prices are at all-time highs? Who here is sick and tired of this disgusting thieving system? Who here wants to take the power back? And folks, let's be very clear. These bad outcomes that we're facing are not unintended consequences that no one could have possibly known were going to happen. We told them it was going to happen. The Libertarian Party has been saying for the 49 years that we have existed that these policies would lead to these outcomes. They knew it would happen, and they did it anyway because they want you to be scared. They want you to be hopeless. They want you to be anxious. They want you not to know where your next paycheck is going to come from or whether or not your retirement is secure. They want you not to know whether or not you'll be able to pay your rent or your mortgage. They want you to be desperate. They want you resentful. They want you to fight each other in the streets and hate each other. They want you to be hopeless. And they want your spirit to be broken. Because if they can make you hopeless and if they can break your spirit, it's that much easier to convince you that all you need to do is just give them the rest of the control. All you need to do is give them the rest of your money. All you need to do is let them take control of every single aspect of your life. Then you'll be okay. Then you'll be safe. Then you'll be happy. Then you won't have anything to worry about. Well, folks, we know that the last people that we can trust to get us out of this mess are the very people that put us in it. We know that we can't trust the architects of this disaster to fix the problem that they have a vested interest in keeping going. That's why we're libertarians. We aren't just running to give people another party to vote for, a lesser of three evils instead of two. We aren't just running to give them another set of politicians to vote for. We're running to end the Fed and to end the IRS and to end the ATF and to end the DEA and to end the war on drugs and to end the wars overseas and to end the spiraling out of control cost of living and every other bad thing that has come out of this disgusting Fed system. That's why we're voting for Joe Jorgensen. Before I take the time to introduce you to my amazing running mate, let's talk for a moment about our opponents. Let's talk about the people that are asking you to throw your vote away. Let's talk about Joe Biden. Oh, you've heard of him. Name a policy you hate. The war on drugs, the endless wars overseas, the war on guns, the Obamacare mandates, the 1994 crime bill. We could go with civil asset forfeiture, no knock raids, mandatory minimum sentencing. We can go on and on and on. Every bad policy that we are facing right now from the federal government over the past several decades, Joe Biden has either helped write it, helped sponsor it, helped vote for it to pass into law, or helped oversee its enforcement during the 8 years that he was in the White House. Joe Biden is one of the architects of every bad policy to come out of Washington, D.C. for the nearly 50 years he's been there when he's not busy sniffing children or forgetting what his name is. And how brutal, how perfect, how fitting that the architect of the militarized police state would pick as his running mate one of its most brutal enforcers. Let's talk for a moment about Kamala Harris, who has the distinction of putting away more people in cages for victimless crimes at the state level than any other person alive, at a rate of 19 black people for every white person she put away. Let's talk about Kamala Harris, who at least twice that we know of intentionally withheld exculpatory evidence in a capital murder case. Let me say that again. Let's talk about someone who, at least twice that we know of, tried to have someone executed that she had evidence that they didn't do it. And not only did she not refuse to prosecute them, she refused to release that evidence even after she was ordered to do so. She illegally tried to have someone killed at least twice that we know of. Why? Because she didn't want to lower her conviction record. This is who the Democrat Party asks you to throw your vote away for. Now let's talk about the other wing of that plane crash. Let's talk about Donald Trump. Oh, you've heard of him too. Let's talk about the lifelong crony who has used the power of government to enrich himself at the expense of everyone else around him. Whether we're talking about him using eminent domain to force widows to sell their homes to him so he could build his next failed casino project, and when those casino projects failed, using the bankruptcy courts to unload as much of his debts onto his poor shareholders and investors as possible so he could walk away with as much of the profits as possible. Let's talk about the man who said that he would drain the swamp, only to become the king of the swamp creatures. He said that he would cut spending, and instead he has spent more money in one term than any other president before him. This year alone, he has already signed off on $6.6 trillion of spending, and as we speak, he is currently cheerleading to pass one more multi-trillion-dollar crony bailout bill that will probably get that number closer to $10 trillion by the end of the year. He said that he would end the federal debt, and instead he has run up more debt again in just one term than any president before him. He said that he would end the wars overseas and bring the troops home, and instead there are 15,000 more troops overseas now than there were when he got into office. And of course he said that he would protect our right to keep and bear arms, and he, with the blessing of the NRA, side note, has passed more gun control regulations and executive orders than the last 5 presidents before him, and he has pushed hard for red flag laws in all 50 states, the kind of laws that led to the murder of people like Duncan Lemp and others. This is who the Republican Party asked to... Oh, sorry. I almost forgot. Let me talk about his running mate for a moment. Let me talk as much about Mike Pence as he has demonstrated relevance during this administration. A fly landed on his head. This is who the Republican Party asks you to throw your vote away for. These are the craven, pandering sociopaths who step up every single election cycle and say, hey there guys, me again. I know I've created all this whole mess that we're going through right now, but if you vote for me one more time, I promise that I will fix all of these things that I have caused to happen and am working right now to make worse. But you got to vote for me one more time, and you can't possibly vote for someone else, because if you vote for someone else, third party, you're wasting your vote, and you might get this other guy over here that I work with every single day to screw you over. These are the folks who are asking you to throw your vote away. By the way, who here caught the VP debates and the presidential debates? Round of applause. I'm so sorry. Thoughts and prayers to all of you. We're going to get through this together. I had to watch it too, so I could react to them. Folks, we saw why I wasn't in that VP debate. For the same reason that they didn't have Joe in the presidential debate. Because if there had been an actual sane adult there who could form a coherent sentence, who was able to demonstrate with actual policies how we got into the mess that we're in, that they have put them in with their respective parties, and how we can use common sense libertarian reforms to get us out of those messes, not only would the American people be voting libertarian overwhelmingly, they'd probably never vote Republican ever again. That's why we weren't allowed in that debate. Now let's talk for a moment. You can clap for that. I will never tell you, never feel like any time during the time that I'm talking is an inappropriate time to applaud me. Please never ever think that. Exactly. Let's talk about Joe Jorgensen. an opportunity not to throw your vote away. Let's talk about a brilliant self-made entrepreneur, someone who we don't have to worry about whether or not she's going to pass a cognitive test. It saddens me that that's even a hurdle. It's a very low hurdle, but we jump it with great gusto. Let's talk about someone who has demonstrated in her lifetime of leadership that she's ready to lead from day one. Not by taking control from you, but just the opposite. Giving you your control back. Putting you back in charge of your life. Removing the barriers and the burdens and the obstacles that this government, that Republicans and Democrats working together have put in place to make your life so difficult, to make everything so expensive, to make it so that your wages and your income aren't going up as fast as the cost of living at, to make it so that you are increasingly robbed just to benefit billionaire cronies right in your face, being told that they're too big to fail. Well, what about us? I guess we just have to fail. We're not big enough. They're telling you right off the bat that it's okay if you fail because you're not big. We know, the Libertarian Party knows, Joe Jorgensen knows that your life is bigger to you than anything else. And that's why we're going to take that power from those politicians and those cronies and put it back in your hands where it always belonged. Folks, Joe and I and the Libertarian Party and the Libertarian Party of Alabama and of Tennessee and of every other state in the union, state and local affiliates across this country are working together with you to build an army for human liberty, fighting for nothing less than a world set free in our times, and we need your help. If you haven't already done so, I ask you to join the Libertarian Party. Go to lp.org today and sign up to join the party. The Libertarian Party is the only effective bulwark against the Republicrats and their further aims for you. Because let's be very clear, they aren't resting on their laurels. They aren't happy with what they have right now. They want more of your power. They want more of your freedom. They want more of your money. They want your life to be harder so that you are more scared and more reliant on them. They want nothing less than the eventual total control of every single aspect of your life. And the Libertarian Party is the only organization that had the wherewithal and the ability to get on all 50 state ballots, plus DC, during a pandemic to effectively challenge them. The Libertarian Party is the movement for human liberty, and we ask you to join us. And when you've done that, go over to the table here and ask the fine volunteers here about joining the Libertarian Party of Alabama, if you haven't already, and see about joining your local affiliate. And if there isn't one already, make one yourself. They'll help you with that as well. Become part of the grassroots army. We need your help, and we can do this together. And once you've done that, I ask you to go to our website, joe20.com. We have a volunteer form that you can fill out. We'd love to have you fill it out. And if you are able to make a contribution, we ask that you give what you can. Because, folks, unlike our opponents, we don't rob you to pay for our campaigns, and we don't take crony corporate funding. Tom talked about the federal matching funds, where essentially you are robbed through taxes, because as we know, all taxation is theft, and they use it to help fund their campaigns. Now, if and when the Libertarian Party qualifies for it, we'll either choose not to accept it at all or to take it and give it directly back to the people. Give it to soup kitchens. Give it to homeless charities. Give it to charities to help people with addiction. Give it back to the people that it was robbed from instead of putting it back in our hands. Because unlike our opponents think that we already knew that they think that they are entitled to your support and your vote. They tell you that every time they try to shame you into voting for them. But it turns out, surprise, surprise, they think they're entitled to your money too. We don't believe that. We believe that if we have your vote and your support and your donations, it's because we earned it. And if we've earned it, then I ask that for your support, I ask for your vote, I ask you to spread the word to those that you can, and I ask that you give what you are able to do, because that's what we need to do this bus tour. That's what we need to do advertising. That's what we need to do video ads and radio ads and everything else to be able to reach the people directly, because we know the crony corporate media is not going to do us any favors. They can't. Their entire system will fall apart if we get into office. They know that, we know that, and that's the situation we're in. Speaking of crony corporate funding, Donald Trump and Joe Biden in this election so far have received just under $500 million in crony corporate funding combined. Now, I haven't checked today, but the last time I checked, Joe Jorgensen and I have received exactly $0.00 in crony corporate funding for two very powerful reasons. Number one, we'd never accept it, and number two, they'd never give it to us because they know that when Joe and I get elected, when Tom gets elected, when Libertarians running up and down the ballot in all 50 states at every single level of power in government in this country, when we take the power back for the people, their system is over. Their days of being able to saunter into Washington, D.C. and into state and local capitals around the country and walk in with a blank check and demand as much of our money that they rob from us as possible to enrich them, that's all over. They know that if they want to stay wealthy, if they want their companies to grow, that they'll have to actually provide value and have people voluntarily use their services. They know that they won't be able to use regulations to knock out all their smaller competitors so that they can be left to run roughshod over us. They know that if they want to actually do well in life, they'll have to pull themselves up by their bootstraps and live within their means like they've been telling the rest of us to do for decades while they rob us of trillions and stick us with the bill with interest. They know that we will destroy the monster that they've created, and that is why we're voting for Joe Jorgensen. So, folks, with that, we're going to start doing a Q&A here, and I'm not sure who's holding the microphone. This young man right here has a microphone. We'll be taking the first, let's say, 5 questions, and then we'll be transitioning over to where I'm going to be for selfies and autographs and all of that stuff. I will also try to take as many of your questions when you come up to meet me as possible. They'll have to be shorter because I want to make sure everyone here that came out gets a chance to talk with me, even if it's very briefly. But if you have a question that you'd like everyone else to hear, the question and the answer to it, feel free to come out. We'll be taking the first 5, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Step right up.
Come on up. Hey, how are you doing?
Great, how are you?
Good.
With abortion and the pro-life, pro-choice arguments being heard from both sides a lot, and with me talking to a lot of Trump supporters, that's like almost their main argument of why they're voting Trump, is their pro-life stance. I like to push maybe a abortion or an adoption reform. What are your stances on that?
So that's a great way to go about it. Here's another thing. They're so pro-life that they're voting for the guy who tells them that he's pro-life and then continues to fund Planned Parenthood with their tax dollars. The Republican Party, for those who are here that are pro-life, the Republican Party has been using you for decades. They have zero interest in ending abortion. They have zero interest in ending taxpayer-funded abortion. They have demonstrated it the multiple times that they have had total control of both the presidency and Congress and did nothing to actually stop funding for Planned Parenthood. Now, last year, they did a little bit of a shell game where they ended funding it through one means and added funding for it in the other means and actually gave it about an $80 million boost when they switched from, I believe, its line item funding to title whatever it was of Medicare funding. But at the end result, you are being robbed even more to pay for abortions. So that is the first thing I tell pro-lifers, is that the Libertarian Party is the only party that actually will end your taxpayer dollars being funded going towards abortion. We need to look at the main reasons that abortions happen. The 2 main reasons that abortions happen is because the mother, who often already has other children, determines that she cannot afford to have another child. So it's economic issues. And then the second reason is that they don't see there being a suitable or available adoptive parent to be able to adopt the child, and they don't want the child to end up in foster care their entire life, where they are often face abuse and negligence until eventually they graduate out of it. Graduate's quite a way to put it. Imagine never having a parent as a child. That's what they call graduation in the world of foster care. The obvious answers there are to get the federal government out of the adoption process, which makes it so prohibitively difficult and expensive for adoptive parents to be able to meet and parent the children that they were meant to raise. And while they then often are in foster care and being subjected to abuse and neglect, or even just not having a stable home. And then the other aspect of that is all of our economic reforms, deregulating so that the economy grows and the cost of living goes down, so that more pregnant mothers are able to afford the child that they are able to have. We have libertarians that are pro-life. We have libertarians that are pro-choice. We have libertarians that are kind of neutral on the subject. Here is my position, my personal position when it comes to abortion. I and my wife personally are pro-life. Here is the problem with getting government involved in that. The only way you can effectively and constitutionally end abortion is to grant constitutional rights to fetuses, to embryos, to zygotes, to unborn children, if you will. When you do that, yes, it ends abortion, unless it's effectively challenged and ended. But let's say it's challenged and it is upheld. Here's what also happens. I would have never been born. And here's why. My mother had multiple miscarriages and ectopic pregnancies before she had me, something like 7 or 8 of them. If unborn children had the constitutional protections, after the first 1 or 2 failed pregnancies, the government would step in and say, you've already killed enough human lives. At this point, if you do it again, if you get pregnant and it leads to another ectopic pregnancy or another miscarriage, you've now committed negligent homicide. It would lead inevitably to a situation where the government is handing out licenses to even get pregnant in the first place, because now it is about protecting a constitutionally protected life, which means making sure that the mother is living the kind of lifestyle to ensure an optimal pregnancy, not just for the preservation of the life, but for the overall health. So now, if you are above a certain body mass index, you may not be able to get a license to get pregnant. And if you get pregnant, you're now violating the law and facing fines and possible jail time for it. If we're talking about being pro-life here, if you're not taking the prenatal vitamins or a certain amount of exercise that they require, and of course, anytime the government says you have to do something, here come the cronies to say that you have to use their service or their product or their good to be able to have it done legally. You are creating a cottage industry of cronyism that controls pregnancy. Here's what also happens. When someone wants an abortion, especially if it's to avoid getting in trouble for an illegal pregnancy because they couldn't afford the license fee, now they have to go into a back alley to get it, where it's far less safe for them. You don't end the problem. We've seen that with the war on drugs. We saw it with the war on alcohol. We're seeing it with the war on sex work and other victimless crimes. We would see it with abortion as well. The way that you reduce abortion is stop taxpayer funding for it, which Republicans will never do, end the economic conditions that are making so many pregnant women choose not to have a child because they can't afford it, and get rid of the regulations on adoption at the federal level that are making it so difficult for adoptions to happen in the first place. That's how you actually end and reduce abortions without creating yet another way for government to control our lives. Thank you. Hey, how are you doing?
Well, I'm alright. I actually just came with my friend over there. She wanted me to see about being a libertarian, since I've sadly been with my family because they kind of swayed me to vote for what I honestly believe to be the best judgment in my family's case.
Okay.
So now that I'm being told about Joe Jorgensen after how long now? I kind of lost track. But after I've been hearing what she stood for, and I'm going, maybe she makes sense, because I've seen how Trump been doing his thing, and I'm sorry, but we dodged a bullet when Hillary didn't win, because if she won, that would have been the last time anyone could have ever voted. And I'm also thinking, with Joe Jorgensen, when she was trying to give less power to the government and more power to us, I kind of want to understand, since sadly I am not a libertarian and I don't claim to be yet, I kind of want to understand more what would she be doing on the free market wise.
That's what we mean, is a market completely set free. We see how difficult the average person that isn't already at a certain level financially, to be able to own a business, or to be able to find gainful employment, or to be able to afford higher education, or even healthcare, or even housing, the basic things that we need. And we see why that is. When government regulates something, two things happen. the providers of whatever that thing is that they're regulating, who are smaller and less able to afford complying with those regulations, go out of business because they can't afford it, or they do it illegally, which means they can barely do any business because they can't really get big enough where they could get in trouble, get enough attention and get in trouble. That just leaves the big guys, which was the whole point, is to kick out the smaller competitors. Now that the big guys are the only ones left, they can pretty much charge whatever they want. They can pretty much control the whole game, and that is what leads to even more regulations and even more price gouging and even more things that make things more expensive, lower quality, and us having fewer and fewer options as consumers. It is also what leads to an increasing number of people unable to find gainful employment or unable to start their own businesses. This is what happens when government is in control of the economy. This has continued and gotten worse under Republican and Democrat administrations, Republican and Democrat Congresses, Republican and Democrat control of various state and city capitals. The Republican Party has a vested interest in making your life harder and making it harder for you to strive and to prosper because it's easier to control you if you're at least somewhat reliant on them. They want a healthcare system, for example, that is so increasingly expensive that even people that are on subsidized healthcare plans can't afford healthcare. They want it that way. As much as you would think they would want it where we were happy and would want to be happy with their governance, that we would vote for them, they don't need that. All they have to do is create the illusion of choice. Then they don't have to give you good values, because then instead of giving you good values, they can say, well, I know you don't like me, but look at this guy over here. He's way worse than me. He's playing good cop to their bad cop. Meanwhile, that one is over here with this group of voters who are upset about something and go, listen, I know you don't like me, but that guy hates you. They're playing good cop to each other's bad cop. The way that we fix that and the way that we get the free market that we deserve and that makes things better for all of us is to kick these people out, which kicks their cronies out too, and give the power back to the people.
Sure. So, I understand what you're saying when they're going, hey, I know I may be bad, but the other guys may be worse. I have seen that for, I want to say maybe a few presidents past, and I'm just going, come on. We're grown adults. We're supposed to take care of our country and not just trying to throw dirt on the other guy. So I'm happy I'm finally get to see a competitor who I wish I could see her come up on the debate, because honestly, she seems like, as you said earlier, the most mature one in the group. And I'm happy to actually see a competitor now to try and talk her ideals instead of trying to throw dirt on everyone else. So I'm proud to know that I'm voting for someone who can act like an adult instead of watching two old men that act like a bunch of children.
Thank you, man. That means a lot to me, and I thank you for your support. I appreciate it. Thank you. Hey, how are you doing?
I'm all right. What type of challenges have y'all had so far this year being in the media? I know back in 2016, Gary Johnson got some coverage, as did Jill Stein. This year, I've seen nothing at all.
So we've gotten some national media. We've gotten a lot more. What we've gotten more than what Gary and Bill got was local and regional media. They got almost none of that. They got a lot of Beltway media. They got some Beltway media. Basically, they got opportunities to be thrown gotcha questions or for Bill to tell everyone to vote for Hillary. And that's why they got the media attention. They got it because they wanted to throw endless gotchas at Gary, and they wanted Bill to come on and say, basically, I endorse Hillary. They didn't get that with us. If they ask us gotchas, we've got gotchas back that make them wish that they hadn't asked us that. We have gotten a lot more local and regional media coverage. Here's the bottom line, man. They know that their days are numbered. The reason we weren't included in almost any polling is because they know that this ticket has more grassroots support than any ticket before. I'm hearing it every single day. I've been in 30-something states, and every single state that I've been to, I'm talking to activists, including some that have been with the party since the 70s during its founding, telling me they've never seen this kind of grassroots excitement. And that's why they're doing everything they can to kick us out, everything that they can not to include us. I mean, can you imagine if Joe had been on that debate stage? It would have been over. They know that. So our challenge definitely has been the national media, but we also never intended for that to be the way that we get our message to the people anyway. This is why, for the first time ever, we're doing a nationwide bus tour during a pandemic. It is why we are putting ourselves out there at the grassroots level in a way we've never seen before in the Libertarian Party, because we recognize this is the foundation for how we win. This is the foundation for how we make things. By reaching people at the grassroots level, by getting you excited to talk to as many people as you can and being a multiplier effect there, and by getting local and regional media, as well as by increasingly engaging with social media and with streaming services, things that are much more cost effective and do not rely on ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, and CNN is part of ABC. The 6 corporations that own almost all the TV media and radio media in this country, relying on them to grant us good favors. We're working around them. We'll take whatever media they'll give us, but we never were expecting to rely on it. Thank you.
You mentioned the theater of, the Democrats versus Republicans. And,
Right.
In practical terms, the result of either isn't much different.
Right.
And they need each other to be the other's boogeyman.
Yep.
And without, having that opponent that is part of that same system, one could almost imagine a dark hooded cabal where they all, reveal their lizard skin underneath, and
It's
joke
the
about how they're
lizard
going to
conspiracy.
stick it to us some more.
Yeah.
And the Democrats have typically been pretty open and proud of
Being lizards.
the role, that they would have government play in our lives,
Right.
as a custodian
Right.
of individuals.
Yep.
And the Republicans, really, they say that they want to shrink government and,
Right.
and lower taxes and all that, but with each successive president, regardless of party, we see government continue to grow, tax burden continuing to increase. No matter how they want to word that shell game, we're going to pay somehow, if not directly by deduction of taxes, if they put those taxes on companies who will naturally increase the prices of the goods and services they provide.
Right.
We'll end up paying indirectly.
Right.
What are some examples by which a libertarian might, given the opportunity, actually take steps to shrink the government?
Okay, absolutely. So at the actual policy level, once we're in positions of power and influence. Okay, so here's what an example I can give is when Joe gets elected. One of the first things that we can do doesn't even require Congress, and here's why. Congress has so abdicated their responsibility in the form of creating one regulatory agency after the next. Over the past several decades, it seems like every couple of years they create another alphabet soup agencies and grant them nearly unlimited regulatory authority, thereby basically handing that entire sector of decision making over to the executive branch almost exclusively, with very little oversight from the legislature. That is a total centralizing of power into the executive branch that is very harmful. The silver lining to that is that when Joe gets elected, she could just start undoing a lot of that. All those really bad, burdensome, pointless regulations and executive orders, she can just start undoing that. Trump and Obama brag about having their pen in their phone. She's going to have a giant